At the start of the month, I made a video taking a look at 7 footballers who were written off too soon. Football fans are notoriously fickle, and sometimes just a single performance can completely alter people's perceptions of a player, particularly if that performance is in a big game. Despite the lessons of the past and the number of occasions in which much derided players have ended up being brilliant, or hotly tipped players that end up falling off the wagon, we're all guilty of rushing into rash judgments at times. Whilst the video at the start of the month was about players who had already proven their doubters wrong, today's video is about those who have been denigrated and that I think could well prove people wrong in the future. I planned this a few weeks back and had Patrick Bamford down as one of my 7, but since he's made a pretty barnstorming start to the season, I've had to bump him out and find an adequate replacement. One last thing, apologies if I sound like I'm on death's door. I have a bit of a fever and a banging headache. I've been for a COVID test and there's a chance there might be some days without a video over the next week or so, since I'm feeling pretty rotten. Right, on a lighter note, here are 7 footballers who I think have been written off too soon. Harry Wilson. I've seen a lot of disparaging comments about Harry Wilson over the last 12 months, and to be honest, I'm not sure they're all that deserved. I've seen it suggested that he's a championship standard player at best, that all he's good at are free kicks, and that the hype surrounding him only a year or so ago was completely unfounded. This largely comes off the back of a season in which Wilson was relegated at Bournemouth, and whilst he didn't set the world alight on the South Coast, I don't think he was nearly as bad as some people seem to be claiming. For a start, he scored 7 goals from 31 games in the Premier League, which made him the Cherries' joint top scorer along with his namesake Callum Wilson. Whilst Callum Wilson made a £20 million switch to Newcastle over the summer, Harry Wilson couldn't even find a Premier League suitor, and I think there are a handful of clubs who missed a trick on that one. Wilson previously scored 7 goals and made 3 assists from just 11 starts on loan at Hull City, and he also scored 16 goals and made 4 assists across a full season on loan at Derby County. Those are excellent numbers, and having watched almost every one of Wilson's games at Hull, and plenty of him since at Derby and Bournemouth, I'm convinced that there's a really good player in there. Whilst his ability from set pieces is superb, Wilson also has quick feet, he can whip a really dangerous ball into the box, and he's a goal threat from open play as well. Personally, I think he's too good to be playing in the Championship, and I think Cardiff have pulled off an absolute masterstroke to bring him on loan this season, despite the enormous investment on their part to complete the deal. I'd be willing to go on a limb and say, sparing a dreadful injury, there isn't a chance in hell that he won't be playing Premier League football when he's 25, and I think he'll end up being good enough to start for a top half team in only a few years' time. Renato Sanches. Renato Sanches has had quite a rollercoaster of a career for someone who is still only 23 years old. When Portugal won the Euros in 2016, Sanches played a big part, despite the fact that he was only 18. He won 12 caps for the European champions in 2016 during his breakout season at Benfica, and following just a single season of first-team football, Bayern Munich were willing to pay €35 million up front for the teenager in a deal which had the potential to rise to an eye-watering €80 million, subject to add-ons. Bayern Munich don't go around throwing €40 to €80 million on players without some consideration, and that was a mark of the high regard that Sanches was held in. He won the Golden Boy Award in 2016, but he struggled to show his best form in Bavaria. The following season, it looked as though Swansea City had pulled off the loan signing of the century, but Sanches made just 12 Premier League appearances and faced significant criticism as the Swans were relegated. In 2019, Sanches left Bayern Munich for Lille, chucked into the rubbish bin of once promising young flops by many people, but I'm not so sure that's the case. Lille have a tremendous record when it comes to developing young players, and Sanches still has tremendous potential. Christophe Galtier is a brilliant man manager, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sanches was among the most impressive midfielders in Ligue 1 this season, and potentially looking at another big move in a couple of years' time. Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa. I think anyone who has watched Fulham this season knows they would be foolish to write off Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa, but I don't think that many people have watched Fulham this season, and for that reason, he still seems greatly underappreciated by most football fans. Anguissa joined Fulham during the club's free spending summer of 2018, arriving from Marseille for a club record £13 million. There were news stories claiming that Marseille couldn't believe their luck, and Anguissa did little in his debut campaign with the Cottagers in truth. However, Anguissa spent last season on loan at Villarreal whilst Fulham won promotion from the Championship, and he was superb for the La Liga side in his preferred position. Villarreal offered €25 million for Anguissa, a bid that most likely would have been accepted had Scott Parker's side lost the playoff final. As things happened, Fulham won at Wembley, and the club convinced Anguissa to stick around for another season in the Premier League. Strong in the tackle, but also really neat and tidy in possession. Personally, I think Anguissa is Fulham's most talented player, and if they are to stay up this season, Scott Parker needs to build his midfield around the Cameroon international. Whatever happens at Craven Cottage this season, I think Anguissa will be playing top-flight football next season, and there have even been reports in the European press of interest from Real Madrid and AC Milan. Davie Zelka. A suggestion from Tim on Twitter, and a pretty bold one too. I've decided to go along with your madness, Tim. I say madness because in the last 2 seasons, Davie Zelka has only scored 4 goals in 60 Bundesliga games. For an out-and-out centre-forward, even one that often acts as a supporting striker for someone who is more prolific, that's a pretty abysmal record. For those of you who don't know anything about him, Zelka is a 6'4" target man with tremendous physical attributes. He's powerful, aggressive, and he can run for days, and for a man of his size, he's seriously quick. Unfortunately, there are some undoubted flaws to his game. He isn't the most technically gifted, his first touch can often let him down, and whilst he's an absolute titan in the air, the direction of his headers often leave a lot to be desired. Zelka was incredibly prolific at youth team level for Germany, and he bagged 14 goals in his first season at Hertha Berlin. It's been downhill ever since though, and Zelka looks like a man completely shot of his confidence. Despite his limitations though, he has a fantastic work rate, and that can only ever bode well. If he can better utilise the attributes in which he does excel and work on his finishing and training, he has shown in the past that he is capable of hitting double figures and providing an excellent foil for a strike partner in the Bundesliga. So there's no reason the 25-year-old can't do that again. Lazar Markovic. Alright, laugh away all you want, Liverpool fans, but somewhere inside of Lazar Markovic there is an excellent winger just waiting to burst out. As with a few players in this 7, Markovic had an excellent youth career and a very early breakthrough. He was a Serbian international at 18, and following a couple of excellent seasons at Partizan Belgrade, he was signed by Benfica for £9 million. In a single season with the Portuguese Giants, Markovic won a treble, he scored 7 goals in 47 games, he made the Europa League team of the season, and he was twice named as the Portuguese Primeira Liga's Player of the Month. That was all that Liverpool needed to convince them that Markovic was worth £22.5 million, arriving alongside the likes of Adam Lallana and Mario Balotelli as Brendan Rodgers looked to plug the gaps following the departure of Luis Suarez. Markovic made 34 appearances in his first season at Anfield, but he failed to hit the ground running, and from there on, it was a struggle. He enjoyed mixed fortunes out on loan with Fenerbahce, Sporting, Hull City and Anderlecht before the Reds agreed to a contract termination and Markovic signed a short-term contract at Fulham. Markovic made just 1 appearance as Fulham were relegated, making him the second player from that squad to feature in this 7, and there would be no contract extension forthcoming. In light of that fact, Markovic returned to Partizan in the summer of 2019, where he was excellent at times last season. Lightning quick and good on the ball, I still think Markovic can become a really good wide man and maybe return to one of the big 5 leagues at some point. The only hurdle for him may be his persistent injury problems. Dominic Solanki. There are 2 former Hull City loanees, 2 players who have been relegated at Fulham, and 2 ex-Liverpool players in this 7, in addition to 1 man who is still contracted to the Merseyside outfit. Dominic Solanki was actually a very good piece of business by Liverpool, despite the fact that he only scored 1 goal in 27 games and only spent a single season with the club. Liverpool signed Solanki after his contract ended at Chelsea in a deal which cost the club just £3 million, with that fee having been set by a tribunal, yet they were able to sell the former England youth team sensation to Bournemouth for £19 million, despite his abysmal record at Anfield. Solanke almost went the entirety of last season without scoring a single goal, before bagging a brace against Leicester City and scoring against Everton on the final day of the season. Had he managed to locate his shooting boots a little sooner, the Cherries may have avoided relegation to the Championship. Solanke has had a decent start to life in the Championship this season, without having set the world alight, with a couple of goals and a couple of assists to his name, in a Bournemouth team that looks well placed to challenge for an immediate return to the top flight. Despite the fact that he has been mocked mercilessly, and Bournemouth equally so for the fee that they paid for him, I still think that Solanke could come good at Dean Court. He's a really well-rounded centre-forward who can run it behind, you can hit the ball up to him, and he's more than comfortable with the ball at his feet. I think he'll hit 15 to 20 goals this season, and I think he could be back in the Premier League before long, with or without Bournemouth. Tanguy and Ndombele. I must say I was surprised to discover just how many people had written off Tanguy and Ndombele, particularly with the response in the YouTube comment section and on Twitter when I made a video ranking every £50 million plus Premier League signing. I was really excited to see Ndombele in action in the Premier League following his arrival at Spurs, having been really impressed whenever I'd seen him at Lille. Admittedly, having set the North Londoners back £55 million up front, with almost another future £10 million in possible add-ons, the Frenchman was a little underwhelming in his debut campaign. Having looked so energetic and direct at Lyon, Ndombele looked lethargic at times at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and certain games just seemed to pass him by. Jose Mourinho has never been the type of boss to stand for passengers, but he obviously still sees a player in Ndombele. There was reportedly plenty of interest in the French international over the summer, but Tottenham stood firm, and Ndombele has played in 8 of Tottenham's 9 games so far this season. Brilliant on the ball, accurate in the pass, and capable of injecting real speed and strength into a midfield, I still think that Ndombele has all the tools to become a world-class midfielder. We shouldn't forget how young he is and how rapid his rise has been. Ndombele only made his senior debut in the 2016-17 season, and that was a season which he spent in the second tier of French football. He strikes me as someone who will keep working to improve, and I think that those who have written the Frenchman off will come to look foolish with time. So that is it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Sorry if I sounded a bit off today. Leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for HITC Sevens. Oh, and you can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram, where the username is just @HITC Sevens on both.